Dion's son just made the boldest move in football, and it had nothing to do with stats. Shedeur Sanders looked at the Cleveland Browns, their cursed reputation, their failure to develop even one elite quarterback, and said, "Not me." No rookie wants to walk away from an NFL shot, especially with a name like his. But for Sanders, the real risk wasn't staying off the field, it was stepping onto it in a Browns uniform. He saw what the franchise had done to others. He knew better than to bet his legacy on a franchise so consumed by dysfunction. This isn't just about Shedeur dodging disaster. It's about a player taking ownership in a league that rarely allows it. The Browns' history is littered with next big things, who flamed out before they even had a chance. Sanders just made sure he wouldn't be the next name on that list. And now, other players are watching, questioning, and backing away from Cleveland too. The NFL wasn't ready for this. One moment, Shedeur Sanders was being spoken about as the future face of the Cleveland Browns. The next, he was gone. No injury, no scandal, no cryptic tweets. He simply left, walked away during preseason and didn't look back. The silence said everything, because this wasn't just another draft bust. It wasn't another injury or locker room implosion. It was a conscious, calculated decision by a highly touted quarterback to reject one of the NFL's most dysfunctional franchises before they had a chance to do what they've done so many times before, ruin a promising career. And if you're Cleveland, you should be terrified. Not just because you lost a quarterback, but because you just became a league-wide warning sign. This wasn't a trade request or a contract holdout. Shedeur Sanders didn't stall, didn't delay, didn't drag it out. He left, on his own terms. And by doing so, he held up a mirror to the Browns organization, and what he saw staring back was enough to make him walk away from his NFL debut before it ever truly began. No one saw it coming. Not fans, not insiders, and definitely not head coach Kevin Stefanski, who reportedly was not handling this well behind closed doors. And honestly, how could he? Stefanski built his entire offseason strategy around Sanders. This was his guy. The quarterback who was supposed to be different. The one who wasn't going to fall victim to the curse that's haunted Cleveland for more than 2 decades. But now Stefanski's stuck with nothing. No quarterback. No plan. No direction. This wasn't just about talent, it was about identity. Sanders was the shot at rewriting the Browns' most embarrassing storyline, their never-ending quarterback carousel. Instead, his departure adds one more name to the long, brutal list of what-ifs. Except this time, it's worse. Because Sanders didn't even let it begin. That's the part that stings. He didn't get beaten by the system. He dodged it. And honestly, who can blame him? This is a franchise with a notorious reputation for mismanaging quarterback development.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
We're not talking 1 or 2 misfires. This is systemic. A pattern. Cleveland has burned through young talent like it's a ritual. From passing on future MVPs to sabotaging their own picks with poor coaching and front office instability, the Browns have built their legacy not on wins, but on disappointment. And Shedeur Sanders knew enough about football, about the league, and about his own brand to know he didn't want to be part of that legacy. That's not arrogance. That's strategy. Because in today's NFL, players are finally starting to understand that their careers are too short, too valuable, and too fragile to waste on organizations that can't get their act together. Shedeur saw the writing on the wall, and instead of waiting for the collapse, he stepped away before the damage could begin. It's not just a move. It's a message. And the rest of the league heard it loud and clear. His exit, quiet as it was, sent shockwaves. Coaches, players, agents, everyone is reevaluating what it means to land in Cleveland. If a high-profile quarterback with NFL bloodlines and the confidence to lead a franchise takes one look inside that building and says, "No thanks," how can anyone argue with that? This isn't just about Sanders. This is about perception. And perception in the NFL is everything. Cleveland already had a reputation problem. Now they have a credibility crisis. Because this wasn't a media narrative. This wasn't speculation. This was action. A player voted with his feet, and the league is watching. The Browns are once again back at square one. The locker room, already fractured, is left questioning leadership. The fans, worn down by decades of disappointment, are being asked to reset their hopes again. And Stefanski, who staked his system and potentially his job on Sanders, is suddenly coaching on borrowed time. And let's talk about that silence one more time. Because it matters. Sanders didn't tweet some vague motivational quote. He didn't go on a podcast to explain himself. He didn't leak stories through sources close to the situation. He just vanished. And that silence? It wasn't passive. It was powerful. It told everyone everything they needed to know. He didn't leave to stir drama. He left to protect himself. From the chaos. From the curse. From becoming yet another name etched into the walls of a franchise that's turned quarterback failure into an art form. In a league where players are so often told to be grateful, to accept whatever situation they're handed, to just put their heads down and work, Sanders flipped the script. He said no. He said, "I'm not putting my future in your hands." That kind of clarity is rare. And for Cleveland, it's devastating. Because now, the franchise has to ask itself the question it's been avoiding for years. What if the problem isn't the players? What if the problem is the Browns? It's not hard to see the pattern. New name, new hope, new disaster. Lather, rinse, repeat. Every few years, a quarterback is paraded as the next savior. And without fail, they leave broken, benched, or forgotten. And now players are starting to opt out before the spiral even begins. That's unprecedented. And it marks a shift that the Browns are absolutely not ready for. Because this isn't just a bad year or a missed opportunity. This is a reputational stain that will be hard to scrub. The NFL is a copycat league, and if more players follow Shedeur's lead, if they start saying no to dysfunctional organizations the way Sanders just did, it could change how business is done, especially in places like Cleveland. The Browns are no longer seen as a rebuilding project. They're viewed as a warning. And while the front office tries to spin this, while they issue carefully worded statements about mutual decisions and respect for all parties, none of it matters. Because the damage is already done. Sanders' departure was clean, unemotional. Swift. That's what makes it so effective. He didn't lash out. He didn't air grievances. He just removed himself from the equation. And in doing so, he took control of his narrative. He refused to let Cleveland define him. And now, the Browns are stuck with theirs. No quarterback. No credibility. No plan. Just another offseason built on false hope, crumbling under the weight of their own dysfunction. The NFL moves fast. And while some teams are evolving, building cultures that players actually want to be part of, Cleveland is stuck. Still selling the same tired dream. Still hoping the next guy will be the one. But it's not about the one anymore. It's about the environment, the infrastructure, the why behind all these collapses. And until that gets fixed, the outcome isn't going to change. Shedeur Sanders knew that. That's why he left. And maybe, just maybe, this is the moment the rest of the league starts asking the same questions. How long can a franchise keep failing before players start walking? How many quarterbacks have to vanish before someone takes accountability? Because this wasn't just about a rookie leaving a team. This was about a player choosing not to be part of a losing cycle. And that choice? It echoed louder than any interception or fumble ever could. So where does Cleveland go from here? They'll reset. They always do. Another quarterback. Another draft. Another story to sell. But if they don't fix the core of what's broken, none of it will matter. Because now players are watching. And more importantly, leaving. Drop your thoughts below. Did Shedeur make the right move? Can the Browns ever shake this curse? Or is this just who they are now, an NFL team known more for what they could have been than what they are? Hit that like button if you saw this coming. Share with your crew of long-suffering football fans. And subscribe for more deep dives into the wildest stories in sports, because this league, it never stops handing out drama. You'd think, at some point, someone in that front office would stop and ask, why does this keep happening? But no. Every season, it's the same cycle. A new quarterback arrives. The media talks about turning over a new leaf. The fan base gets cautiously optimistic, burned too many times to believe fully, but still hopeful because hope is all they've got. And then the whole thing crumbles. But this time, it didn't even get the chance to begin. Shedeur Sanders didn't throw a pick six. He didn't fumble a 2-minute drill. He didn't blow a game or cause a locker room rift. He didn't even play. He looked around, read the energy in the building, saw the writing on the wall, and left. That's not drama. That's clarity. That's self-respect. And it has the entire league on edge. Because this is about more than just Cleveland. This is about player agency in the modern NFL. About what happens when athletes stop accepting dysfunction as part of the job. For years, quarterbacks have walked into franchises like the Browns, convinced they could be the one to finally fix it. Shedeur Sanders wasn't buying that myth. He didn't want to be part of the redemption arc. He wanted control of his career. And stepping away from the Browns before they could do what they've done to so many others wasn't just a bold move, it was a necessary one. Look at the history. You know the names. You don't even have to be a die-hard fan to feel the weight of it. The Browns have gone through quarterbacks like paper towels. Every single one arrives with hype, with promise, with the same tired line. This time, it's different. Spoiler, it never is. Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Colt McCoy, Brandon Whedon, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield. Each one of them walked in as a solution and walked out as a headline, usually for the wrong reasons. Some of them had raw talent. Some had confidence. Some had pedigree. None of it mattered. Because Cleveland isn't just a team with bad luck. It's an ecosystem that swallows potential. And that's what Shedeur saw. You don't need to spend a full season in that locker room to know when something's off. When the environment is toxic. When the playbook's a mess. When leadership is spiraling. And Sanders had seen enough. He made a decision that most players don't feel allowed to make. He walked before he was broken. It's not that he couldn't have stayed. He probably would have won the starting job. He would have been praised in every local headline. He would have been the next jersey selling at the pro shop. And then, slowly, it would have all unraveled. Like it always does. A bad loss. A scapegoat moment. The fan base turning. The front office looking elsewhere. A coaching staff reshuffling the system mid-season. The whispers. The pressure. The blame. And then, just like the others. Shedeur didn't wait for it. He refused to let that be his story. And that move? It was heard loud and clear in every front office across the league. Especially the ones who've built reputations on chaos and instability. Because now, players aren't just looking for a paycheck, they're looking for competence. Cleveland's response, of course, has been exactly what you'd expect. Carefully crafted statements. Cold, vague messaging. Muted deflections about fit and philosophy. And in the background? Panic. Because they know what this looks like. You don't recover quickly from a story like this. The media isn't letting it go. The fans definitely aren't. And no player's going to forget it. Because Shedeur didn't leave over drama. He didn't leave over a dispute. He left because of the system. The Browns system. The one that chews up quarterbacks and spits out regrets. And Kevin Stefanski? His frustration behind the scenes is very, very real. This was the guy he'd been building around. He put his name on Sanders. Aligned the scheme to his strengths. Bought into the idea that this kid would be his career-defining quarterback. And now he's back at square one. But what's worse than losing a quarterback is what you lose with him, your credibility. If you can't hold on to a promising rookie through training camp, what does that say about your program? And no, this isn't something you just move on from. This isn't a torn ACL or a trade deadline miss. This was a player walking out because staying would have been worse for his future. It's one thing for a player to not succeed. That happens everywhere. It's another thing entirely when a player chooses not to even try under your leadership. That's not just a reflection of Cleveland's history, that's an indictment of its present. So what now? We already know the drill. There'll be another quarterback. Another announcement. Another training camp press conference with words like culture and grit and accountability. They'll patch together a plan. Try to rally the locker room. Sell a story about opportunity and moving forward. But deep down, everyone's going to be thinking the same thing. What if the next guy leaves too? Because the precedent has been set. Players have always had power, they just haven't always used it. But Shedeur did. And that changes things. He reminded everyone that you don't have to stay somewhere just because that's how the script usually goes. You don't have to endure dysfunction to prove you're tough. You don't have to let a broken system write your legacy. And now, the league is watching closely. Because if more players start walking away from teams with toxic environments, especially quarterbacks, front offices are going to have to finally face a truth they've spent years avoiding. You don't deserve loyalty just because you cut the check. You earn it by building something that works. By protecting your players. By not letting talent get swallowed by chaos. Right now, Cleveland has none of that. What they do have is a brand new PR crisis. And a fan base wondering, once again, if they're cursed. If this team is even capable of getting it right. If the Browns will ever stop being the punchline. It's getting harder to believe. Because this isn't bad luck. It's not fate. It's structure. It's mismanagement. It's poor leadership being disguised as rebuilding. And Shedeur Sanders wasn't falling for it. He didn't say a word. He just packed up and protected his legacy. And honestly, that silence said everything. At this point, you almost have to ask, how much more can Browns fans take? Because this isn't just another botched draft pick. It's not a tragic injury or a superstar demanding a trade. This is something entirely different. Shedeur Sanders, a generational quarterback talent with the resume, bloodline, and poise to lead a franchise, chose to walk away. Not after a rough season. Not after locker room tension. Not after some off-field controversy. He walked away during preseason, before taking a single official snap. That's not a bust. That's not drama. That's a statement. And that statement is burning like wildfire through the entire league. Let's be brutally honest here. The Browns didn't just lose a player. They lost something much harder to recover: trust. Trust from players. Trust from agents. Trust from fans who keep showing up every year hoping this time the suffering might actually be over. And the worst part? This could have been avoided. Everything in the Shedeur Sanders situation screams one thing. He didn't believe in the Browns' ability to protect him, physically or professionally. And how could he? The track record is abysmal. The dysfunction is generational. Every new quarterback is treated like a fresh coat of paint slapped onto a crumbling foundation. The front office throws out buzzwords, the coaching staff overpromises, the fan base clings to hope, and 6 months later, it's back to square one. Shedeur clearly wanted no part of that cycle. He came in, saw the operation from the inside, and recognized a toxic pattern. And rather than stay and tough it out, he took control. Not of the team, of his future. That's why this isn't just a Cleveland story, it's a league-wide wake-up call. For so long, the NFL has operated with this unspoken rule. Players have to stick it out, no matter how broken the organization. Because that's the business. Because that's how you earn respect. Because quitting isn't an option. But Shedeur Sanders just threw all of that out the window. And he did it without saying a word. No interviews. No shade. No messy PR tour. Just quiet clarity. He looked at a franchise with a long, embarrassing history of quarterback mismanagement, and he made a career-defining decision before that history could swallow him whole. He didn't need a media campaign. His silence was the campaign. And it hit Cleveland like a sledgehammer. Because there's no spinning this. There's no narrative magic that makes this look okay. A young star walking away from your team, not because he failed, but because he didn't trust you not to fail him, that's not a one-time issue. That's institutional. And now, every player on that roster is thinking twice. Every prospect looking toward the draft is watching. Every veteran in contract negotiations is asking themselves if Cleveland is worth the risk. Because if someone with Shedeur's pedigree bails this early, maybe they should too. And the Browns? They've got no one to blame but themselves. You don't build this kind of reputation overnight. It takes years of mismanagement, bad decisions, scapegoating, and chaos. And the Browns have mastered it. Think about the quarterbacks who've come through that door. Some were college superstars. Some were overlooked gems. But all of them shared the same fate. Cleveland got them, Cleveland hyped them, and Cleveland broke them. Shedeur saw that, and he refused to be the next chapter. And look, he's not walking away from football. He's not quitting on the sport. He's quitting on Cleveland. That distinction matters. Because this wasn't about the pressure, or the playbook, or the fan expectations. This was about culture. And for someone who's been around football his entire life, whose father is one of the most iconic athletes of all time, Shedeur understands what it takes to build a winning team. And more importantly, he knows what dysfunction looks like. He walked into Cleveland and saw it immediately. And he walked out. That kind of decision? It takes awareness. It takes maturity. It takes a level of emotional intelligence most rookies aren't encouraged to use. But Shedeur's not most rookies. He's part of a new generation of players who know their worth, understand their brand, and aren't afraid to make uncomfortable choices to protect both. And in doing so, he may have just rewritten the quarterback playbook. Because now, you can't assume that young players will stick it out with bad franchises. You can't assume they'll blindly trust the system. That era's over. Players are watching out for themselves, and franchises like Cleveland, the ones that have taken that trust for granted for years, are now on notice. They're going to have to earn it back. But how? That's the question. Because right now, the Browns don't just have to replace a quarterback. They have to rebuild their reputation from the ground up. And that's not going to happen with a few good PR statements and a mid-tier free agent signing. That's going to take structural change, transparency, competence, consistency. And until that happens, the Browns aren't just a team with a losing record. They're a team players don't want to play for. And in a league built around talent acquisition and development, that's lethal. Shedeur Sanders saw it. And his quiet exit is now the loudest alarm the franchise has heard in years. So where does Cleveland go from here? They'll do what they always do. Regroup. Say the right things. Try to calm the storm. Try to pretend like this wasn't a nuclear moment. But deep down, they know this one is different. Because this wasn't a failure on the field. This was a rejection of the organization itself. A rejection of the culture. A rejection of the idea that things will get better if you just wait long enough. Shedeur didn't wait. He didn't need to. And in walking away, he gave other players permission to do the same. So if you're a Browns fan, you're left asking the same painful questions all over again. What happened? Why does this keep happening? And is there any version of this team that doesn't end in heartbreak? And if you're part of the Browns organization, you better be asking yourself something even harder. When will you finally stop blaming the players and fix the system? Let us know what you think. Did Shedeur Sanders just save his career by leaving early? Can Cleveland ever shake off the curse that seems more real by the day? Or is this just the start of a new wave of athletes who refuse to let bad franchises drag them down? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you're tired of watching talented players get wasted by bad organizations. Share if you know someone who's lived through the heartbreak of rooting for a team that just doesn't get it. And subscribe for more breakdowns on the moments that shake the league to its core. Because this isn't just a football story, it's a turning point. And we're all watching what comes next.